Hey, it's Ed. Welcome back to Leadership Explored. Today's episode is going to be a little different. As I mentioned in our recent break announcement, Andy and I are taking a little time to reset and plan for Season 2. But I didn't want to just go dark. We promised we'd drop a few short pieces in the feed, and the first one is this, a reflection on Season 1. This isn't going to be a simple recap. Instead, as I looked back on all the conversations we had, from Episode 2 on Return to Office, all the way to Episode 14 on assists, I realized we weren't just talking about different topics. It feels like we were often circling the same few core tensions of leadership. And the biggest one, the one that kept showing up everywhere, was the gap between control and trust. We hit this tension right away in our first episodes on return to office and remote-first organizations. It became pretty clear that for a lot of leaders, the RTO mandate wasn't really about productivity or culture. It often felt like a proxy for control, driven by a fundamental lack of trust. We kept coming back to this idea that you can't just lift and shift your in-office culture into a virtual space and expect it to work. Success in a remote or hybrid world isn't about location, it's about intentionality. And that same exact tension showed up when we talked about bureaucracy. We all love to hate it, but we made the case that bureaucracy itself isn't the enemy. Bad bureaucracy is. Bad bureaucracy is coercive control. It's that backpack full of rocks metaphor we used. All these old, heavy rules we're forced to carry, often because a leader wanted to avoid a difficult conversation. But good bureaucracy, that's just about coordination and clarity. It's an external brain for the organization, an enabling system that actually gives people the freedom to move fast without falling into chaos. This tension was also at the heart of our episode on certainty. Leaders feel this immense pressure to perform certainty, to have that perfect Gantt chart that predicts the future 6 months out. But we argued that certainty is mostly an illusion. Leadership isn't about having all the answers, it's about being able to provide clarity. It's about having the confidence to navigate without all the answers and being honest about the risks. The other big arc this season was about who we value. It's this tension between the hero and the system. We hit this head on in episode 13, the myth of the 10x contributor. We talked about that engineer who claims, I'm a 10x developer, I do 10 times the work. And we really pushed back on that lone genius myth, because real, sustainable 10x impact almost never comes from one hero. It comes from a 10x team. It comes from building a 10x environment where everyone can do their best work. That led us right into the very next episode, assists. This was the flip side of the coin. If the 10x hero isn't the answer, who is? We argued it's the glue people, the quiet teammates who connect the dots, who prevent problems before they happen, and who make their star performers look good. They're the ones making the pass, not just taking the shot. The problem is our systems are set up to celebrate the goal, not the assist. We often only notice the glue people when they're gone and things start to fall apart. This connects perfectly to our conversation on It's All the Work. We have this tendency to call the visible stuff, like writing the code or closing the deal, the real work. But we argued that all the invisible stuff, the planning, the documentation, the reporting, the mentoring, that's not a distraction. That is the connective tissue. It's the work that makes all the other work possible. So if leadership is about building trust and valuing the assists, how do you actually do that? That's where the third theme of the season comes in, the foundational human-centric skills. It starts with ethics and hiring for character. It's about who you even let on the team in the first place. We talked about how you can teach skills, but it's a lot harder to teach character. We looked at using behavioral questions. Tell me about a time when, not as a gotcha, but as a proxy for trust. And we talked about the father framework, fairness, accountability, trust, honesty, equality, and respect, as that fundamental baseline for an ethical culture. Once you have that team, you have to maintain the culture. That brought us to giving and receiving feedback. We talked about how good feedback isn't punitive, it's future-focused. It needs to be specific, observable, and clear about the impact. And just as importantly, we talked about receiving feedback. It's its own skill, managing our own defensiveness, staying curious, and looking for that 10% truth. And finally, we talked about the glue that holds all of this together, leadership language. Our words are the culture. We talked about avoiding corporate theater, using vague jargon like finding efficiencies when you really mean layoffs. That misalignment between what you say and what you do is the fastest way to destroy trust. So when I look back at season 1, I see this clear progression. It's a journey from focusing on control to practicing trust. It's about shifting our value from heroes to systems. And it's about realizing that all of it rests on a foundation of intentionality in our ethics, our feedback, and our language. It all comes back to self-awareness and the choices we make every day. As I mentioned in our break announcement, we're excited to take this time to be creative and plan season 2. We're planning to come back in early 2026. We'll be starting with watermelon projects, those efforts that look green on the outside but are red on the inside. And we'll connect that to an idea I've been thinking about for a while. Projects always start red, and how they have to earn their way to green. We're also going to explore ideas like reading is leading and leadership is teaching, and how soft skills are actually the hard skills that move the work. We believe leaders aren't born, they're built, and that's the thread we're going to pull on. Thanks for exploring leadership with me on Leadership Explored. If this season gave you something to think about, I'd love to hear it. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or email us at leadershipexplored@gmail.com. While we're on break, it's a great time to catch up on any episodes you might have missed. We'll post those other reflections during the break, and we'll see you in early 2026 for season 2. Until then, keep leading with purpose.